Imagine this. You wake up to the sound of your alarm, a jarring electronic pulse that pulls you from a dream you can't quite remember. You reach for your phone, as you always do, and within seconds you're scrolling. Through emails, social, media updates, news headlines, the world is at your fingertips, yet you feel nothing. No joy, no curiosity, no connection, just a dull, gnawing emptiness that lingers like a fog. You tell yourself it's just a bad morning, but deep down, you know this feeling isn't new. It's been there for weeks, months, maybe even years. A quiet, insidious presence that you can't quite name. Now imagine this. You're sitting in a crowded cafe surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. Everyone is hunched over their devices, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of screens. No one speaks, no one looks up. The air is thick with silence, but it's not peaceful, it's oppressive. You feel a pang of loneliness, but you don't know why. After all, you're not alone. You have hundreds of friends online, thousands of followers. You're more connected than any generation in history. And yet, you've never felt more isolated. Here's the paradox. We live in an age of unprecedented convenience, comfort, and connection. We have access to more information, more opportunities, and more resources than ever before. And yet, rates of anxiety, depression, and existential despair are skyrocketing. We're richer, healthier, and more technologically advanced than our ancestors could have ever imagined. But we're also more miserable. Why? How is it possible that the very things designed to make our lives better, our smartphones, social media, the internet, are making us feel worse? This is the silent epidemic of our time, a rewiring of the human brain for misery. It's not a virus, not a physical disease, but something far more insidious, a psychological and philosophical crisis that's reshaping how we think, feel, and exist in the world. It's a crisis that's hidden in plain sight, disguised as progress, as convenience, as modernity. And it's a crisis that's affecting all of us, whether we realize it or not. Consider this. What if the tools we've created to liberate us, our technology, our systems, our ideologies, are actually enslaving us? What if the very things we thought would bring us happiness are the ones keeping us trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and despair? What if the modern world, with all its glittering promises of success and fulfillment, is actually a gilded cage? These questions are unsettling, but they're also urgent. Because if we don't confront them, if we don't understand the forces shaping our minds and our lives, we risk losing something essential, not just our happiness, but our humanity. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly present? Not distracted, not anxious, not scrolling or multitasking, but fully immersed in the moment. When was the last time you felt a deep, unshakable sense of meaning, not because of what you achieved or acquired, but because of how you experienced the world? For many of us, these moments are rare, fleeting, almost foreign, and that's not an accident. It's a symptom of something much larger, something that's quietly rewiring our brains and reshaping our lives. So here's the great question. How did we get here? How did we create a world that's so rich in material wealth, but so poor in meaning? How did we become so connected, yet so disconnected, so advanced, yet so lost? And most importantly, what can we do about it? The answers are not simple, but they are profound. They lie at the intersection of psychology, philosophy, and the hidden forces that shape our modern lives. They require us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our society, and the world we've built. And they demand a radical shift in how we think, how we live, and how we understand our place in the universe. This is not just a story about technology or social media or the pace of modern life. It's a story about what it means to be human in a world that's constantly pulling us away from our humanity. It's a story about the silent epidemic that's rewiring our brains for misery and how we can fight back. But before we can find the answers, we must first understand the problem. And to do that, we must dive into the hidden forces that are shaping our minds, our emotions, and our lives. Forces that are as ancient as they are modern, as personal as they are universal. Forces that, once understood, will change everything. So, let's begin. Let's peel back the layers of this silent epidemic and uncover the truths that lie beneath, because the first step to breaking free is seeing the cage for what it really is. To understand the silent epidemic rewiring our brains for misery, we must first confront a truth so fundamental, so deeply woven into the fabric of modern life, that it often goes unnoticed. We are not designed for this world. The human brain, a marvel of evolution, was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years to survive in a world of scarcity, danger, and immediacy. Our ancestors lived in small tribes, hunted and gathered for sustenance, and faced threats that were tangible and acute: predators, starvation, the elements. Their lives were hard, but their minds were calibrated for the challenges they faced. Fast forward to today, and we find ourselves in a world that is almost unrecognizable to our ancient brains. A world of abundance, safety, and endless distraction. A world that, paradoxically, seems to be making us sick. The problem lies in the mismatch between our evolutionary wiring and the environment we've created. Our brains are still running on software designed for a world that no longer exists, and this mismatch is at the root of our modern malaise. Take, for example, the way we process information. Our brains are wired to seek novelty, a trait that once helped us spot potential threats or opportunities in our environment. But in the digital age, this instinct has been hijacked. Every notification, every scroll, every click delivers a hit of novelty, triggering a dopamine response that keeps us coming back for more. The result? A brain that is constantly overstimulated, perpetually distracted, and never truly satisfied. This is not just a matter of willpower or self-control. It's a neurological trap. As psychologist Carl Jung once observed, every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. In our case, the narcotic is information, endless, fragmented, and often meaningless. And like any addiction, it leaves us craving more while delivering less. But the problem goes deeper than dopamine and distraction. It touches on something far more profound: our sense of meaning. Philosophers like Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, argued that the primary drive of human beings is not pleasure, as Freud suggested, but meaning. Frankl wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." In the modern world, we have more comforts and conveniences than ever before, but we are starved of meaning. Our lives, for all their busyness, often feel hollow. Why? Because meaning is not something that can be manufactured or consumed. It is not found in likes, followers, or achievements. It is found in connection to ourselves, to others, and to something larger than ourselves. And yet, the very structures of modern life seem designed to sever these connections. Consider the way we work. The rise of capitalism and industrialization has turned labor into a commodity, something to be bought and sold. Work, once a source of pride and purpose, has become, for many, a soul-crushing grind. We spend our days in cubicles or on Zoom calls, disconnected from the tangible results of our efforts. We are cogs in a machine, and the machine doesn't care if we find meaning in what we do, or consider the way we relate to one another. Social media promises connection, but it often delivers the opposite. We curate our lives, presenting only the highlights, while hiding our struggles and insecurities. The result is a culture of comparison and competition, where everyone is performing and no one is truly seen. As Jean-Paul Sartre famously wrote, "Hell is other people." In the age of Instagram, this has never been truer. And then there is the existential void, the nagging sense that for all our progress, we have lost something essential. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this over a century ago when he declared that God is dead. He wasn't just talking about religion. He was talking about the collapse of shared values and beliefs that once gave life meaning. In the absence of these, we are left adrift, searching for purpose in a world that seems indifferent to our existence. This is the hidden problem at the heart of our modern malaise, a world that has stripped away the very things that make life worth living: connection, meaning, purpose. And in their place, we have been given substitutes: consumerism, distraction, and the illusion of control. But here's the twist. We are complicit in this. We have bought into the myth that happiness can be bought, that success is measured in likes and followers, that the good life is one of constant stimulation and convenience. We have, in a sense, become prisoners of our own desires. The French philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." In our case, the problem is not just our inability to sit quietly, but our refusal to confront the deeper questions of existence. Who are we? What do we want? What does it mean to live a good life? These are not easy questions, and the answers are not simple, but they are essential. Because until we confront the hidden forces shaping our lives, we will remain trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and despair. The good news is that the problem, once understood, contains the seeds of its own solution. But to find those seeds, we must first venture into the unseen consequences of this silent epidemic, the ways it is shaping not just our individual lives, but the very fabric of society. The silent epidemic rewiring our brains for misery is not confined to the individual. It ripples outward, shaping the collective psyche of society in ways that are both subtle and profound. To understand its full impact, we must look beyond the personal and examine the cultural, social, and even neurological consequences of this modern malaise. Consider the rise of what some have called the age of anxiety. Anxiety disorders are now the most common mental illness in the world, affecting nearly 300 million people globally. Depression, too, is on the rise, with the World Health Organization declaring it the leading cause of disability worldwide. These are not just statistics. They are symptoms of a deeper crisis, a crisis of meaning, a crisis of connection, a crisis of the human spirit. But why? Why, in a world of unprecedented comfort and convenience, are we so anxious, so depressed, so disconnected? The answer lies in the way modern life has reshaped our brains. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain is not a static organ. It is plastic, constantly rewiring itself in response to our environment and experiences. And the environment we've created, one of constant stimulation, endless choice, and perpetual distraction, is fundamentally altering the way we think, feel, and relate to the world. Take, for example, the phenomenon of continuous partial attention, a term coined by tech expert Linda Stone. This is the state of being constantly distracted, never fully present, always scanning for the next piece of information or stimulation. It's the mental equivalent of trying to juggle too many balls at once, and while it might feel productive, it's actually exhausting. Studies have shown that multitasking reduces cognitive performance, impairs memory, and increases stress. In other words, the more we try to do, the less we actually accomplish, and the more miserable we feel. But the consequences go beyond mere productivity. Continuous partial attention erodes our ability to think deeply, to reflect, to be present. It fragments our consciousness, leaving us feeling scattered and unmoored. As the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The press of busyness is like a charm. Its power swells. It reaches out seeking always to lay hold of ever younger victims, so that childhood or youth are scarcely allowed the quiet and the retirement in which the eternal may be heard." In our case, the press of busyness is not just external, it's internal. It's the constant hum of our own distracted minds. And then there is the erosion of empathy. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, is a cornerstone of human connection. But empathy requires presence, attention, and emotional bandwidth, all of which are in short supply in the modern world. Studies have shown that excessive screen time and social media use can reduce empathy, particularly in young people. The result is a culture that is increasingly self-centered, polarized, and disconnected. This is not just a social problem, it's a neurological one. Empathy is rooted in the brain's mirror neuron system, which allows us to mirror the emotions of others. But when we spend more time interacting with screens than with people, this system can become underdeveloped or impaired. The result is a kind of emotional numbness, a disconnection from ourselves and others. And then there is the paradox of choice. In the modern world, we are bombarded with options: what to buy, what to watch, what to eat, what to do. This abundance of choice is often touted as a hallmark of freedom, but it can also be a source of paralysis and regret. Psychologist Barry Schwartz calls this the paradox of choice. The more options we have, the harder it is to choose, and the less satisfied we are with our choices. This is because every choice we make comes with an opportunity cost, the knowledge that we could have chosen something else. Over time, this can lead to a chronic sense of dissatisfaction, a feeling that no matter what we do, we're missing out. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of the silent epidemic is the erosion of meaning. Meaning, as Viktor Frankl argued, is not something that can be found in external achievements or possessions. It is something that must be cultivated internally, through connection, purpose, and reflection. But in a world that values speed, efficiency, and productivity above all else, there is little room for meaning. We are so busy doing that we forget to be. This is not just a personal tragedy. It's a cultural one. A society devoid of meaning is a society in crisis. It is a society that is prone to nihilism, extremism, and despair. It is a society that, as Nietzsche warned, risks falling into the abyss. And yet there is hope, because the very forces that have created this crisis, technology, capitalism, modernity, also contain the seeds of its solution. But to find those seeds, we must first confront the unseen consequences of the silent epidemic. We must recognize the ways it is shaping our lives, our relationships, and our society. And we must ask ourselves, is this the world we want to live in? The answer, of course, is no, but to change the world, we must first change ourselves. And that begins with a radical shift in perspective, a rebellion against the forces that are rewiring our brains for misery. The silent epidemic rewiring our brains for misery is not an inevitability. It is not a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake that we must simply endure. It is a human creation, born of choices, both individual and collective, that have shaped the world we live in. And if it is a creation, then it can be uncreated. But breaking free requires more than just awareness. It requires rebellion. A rebellion against the forces that have hijacked our attention, eroded our empathy, and stripped our lives of meaning. A rebellion against the status quo, against the algorithms, against the cultural norms that tell us to do more, be more, have more. A rebellion ultimately against ourselves, against the parts of us that have bought into the myth of modern happiness. This rebellion begins with a radical shift in perspective. It begins with the realization that we are not powerless, that we have agency, that we can choose in every moment how we respond to the world around us. As Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So how do we reclaim that space? How do we break free from the silent epidemic and reclaim our humanity? The first step is to confront the distractions that have colonized our minds. This means setting boundaries with technology, not as a rejection of progress, but as a reclamation of presence. It means turning off notifications, setting aside designated times for email and social media, and creating spaces in our lives that are free from screens. It means rediscovering the lost art of boredom, of stillness, of simply being. This is not easy. Our brains, addicted to the dopamine hits of constant stimulation, will resist. But as with any addiction, the first step is detox, and the rewards are profound. Studies have shown that periods of solitude and reflection can improve creativity, reduce stress, and enhance emotional well-being. As the philosopher Blaise Pascal observed, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. By learning to sit quietly, we begin to reclaim our minds. The second step is to reconnect with what truly matters. This means prioritizing relationships over transactions, presence over productivity, and meaning over material success. It means spending time with loved ones, not just physically but emotionally. It means listening deeply without the urge to check our phones or formulate a response. It means showing up fully and authentically in our interactions with others. This is not just a personal act, it is a radical one. In a world that values speed and efficiency, choosing connection is an act of rebellion. It is a rejection of the transactional mindset that reduces people to objects and relationships to networks. It is a reaffirmation of our humanity. The third step is to cultivate purpose. Purpose is not something that can be found. It is something that must be created. It arises from the intersection of our passions, our values, and the needs of the world around us. As Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Finding your why requires introspection. It requires asking yourself hard questions. What do I care about? What am I good at? What does the world need from me? And it requires taking action, even when the path is unclear. Purpose is not a destination. It is a journey. And it is a journey that can transform even the most mundane tasks into acts of meaning. But perhaps the most important step is to embrace imperfection. The modern world, with its emphasis on achievement and success, has created a culture of perfectionism, a relentless pursuit of an impossible ideal. This pursuit is not just exhausting, it is dehumanizing. It strips us of our vulnerability, our authenticity, our humanity. Breaking free means letting go of the need to be perfect. It means embracing our flaws, our failures, our limitations. It means recognizing that we are enough just as we are. As the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi teaches, there is beauty in imperfection, in impermanence, in the incomplete. By embracing this truth, we free ourselves from the tyranny of perfection and open ourselves to the richness of life. This rebellion is not easy. It requires courage, discipline, and a willingness to go against the grain. But it is also deeply liberating. It is a reclaiming of our humanity, our agency, our freedom, and it is not just a personal act, it is a collective one. Because the silent epidemic is not just a personal crisis, it is a cultural one. And cultural crises require cultural solutions. This means reimagining the systems and structures that shape our lives. It means creating workplaces that prioritize well-being over productivity, schools that nurture curiosity over conformity, and communities that foster connection over competition. It means challenging the narratives that tell us we are not enough, that we must do more, be more, have more. This is not a utopian vision, it is a practical one. Because the stakes are too high to do nothing. The silent epidemic is not just making us miserable. It is threatening the very fabric of society. But if we rebel, if we reclaim our minds, our relationships, and our purpose, we can create a different world. A world that values presence over productivity, connection over consumption, and meaning over material success. A world that is not just livable but worth living in. And that brings us to the final, most powerful realization of all. The silent epidemic rewiring our brains for misery is not just a crisis of modernity. It is not just a byproduct of technology, capitalism, or the pace of modern life. It is, at its core, a crisis of meaning. A crisis that forces us to confront the most fundamental question of all. What does it mean to live a good life? This question is not new. It has been asked by philosophers, poets, and seekers for millennia. But in the modern world, it has taken on a new urgency. Because the answers we've been given, more money, more success, more stuff, are not just inadequate, they are destructive. They have led us to a place of emptiness, alienation, and despair. But there is another way, a way that is not about having more but about being more, a way that is not about escaping the world, but about engaging with it more deeply, a way that is not about finding happiness, but about creating meaning. The ultimate truth is this: meaning is not something that can be found. It is something that must be made. This is the great paradox of the human condition. We long for meaning, for purpose, for connection. But these things cannot be given to us. They must be created moment by moment through our choices, our actions, and our relationships. This is not an easy truth. It requires us to take responsibility for our lives, to stop blaming the world for our unhappiness, and start asking what we can do to make it better. To stop waiting for someone or something to save us and start saving ourselves. But it is also a liberating truth, because it means that we are not powerless, that we have agency, that we can in every moment choose how we respond to the world around us. This is the essence of Viktor Frankl's insight. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing. the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Choosing our own way means rejecting the narratives that tell us we are not enough, that we must do more, be more, have more. It means embracing the truth that we are enough just as we are, that our worth is not determined by our achievements, our possessions, or our social status, that our worth is inherent, intrinsic, unshakable. Choosing our own way also means embracing the messiness of life, the uncertainty, the imperfection, the vulnerability. It means recognizing that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." Living the questions means embracing the journey, not just the destination. It means finding meaning in the process, not just the outcome. It means being present, even when the present is painful. And finally, choosing our own way means connecting with something larger than ourselves. This could be a community, a cause, a tradition, or a sense of the sacred. It could be nature, art, or the simple act of kindness. Whatever it is, it must be something that transcends the self, that reminds us of our place in the larger web of life. This is the ultimate truth. Meaning is not something we find. It is something we create. And we create it by living authentically, by connecting deeply, and by embracing the fullness of life, the joy and the sorrow, the beauty and the pain, the certainty and the mystery. This is not a quick fix. It is not a 10-step program or a life hack. It is a lifelong journey, a daily practice, a way of being, but it is also the most powerful antidote to the silent epidemic. Because when we live with meaning, we are no longer victims of circumstance. We are no longer slaves to distraction, comparison, or despair. We are free, and in that freedom we find not just happiness, but something far more profound, a sense of wholeness, of belonging, of being fully alive. So let us rebel. Let us reclaim our minds, our relationships, and our purpose. Let us create a world that values presence over productivity, connection over consumption, and meaning over material success. And let us remember, in the words of the philosopher Albert Camus, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. That invincible summer is our humanity, and it is ours to reclaim."